Lynn Morresey, and I've been asked to give him a testimony by Greg, who runs the On Fire show. So I'll just start by saying, you know, when I was at school, when I was about 17, 18 at school, I started getting into drugs, and you know, just started off with marijuana and stuff like that, and gradually through while I was at school, but when I left school and I got a job and I started to make a bit of money and started to get to know a few different people, you know, I sort of got I started getting into other drugs. I got into LSD and stuff like that, and within probably a year of leaving school, by the time I was say 18, I'd started to get into hard drugs, and you know, it all just seemed like a game at first. You know, it just seemed like something that I was into, you know, that I was young and, you know, having a good time. It didn't seem like something that was, at that point, I had no idea the extent it was going to take over my life. But as time went on, and it didn't take long either, you know, before I knew it, I was physically addicted to opiate drugs, and which, if any of you don't know, is morphine and heroin, home bake, that type of thing. And drugs just became a really serious problem in my life. And you know, because of the expense of them, I started to I was doing crime. I was actually breaking into doctors' surgeries and chemist shops and stuff to support my habit. So it wasn't long before I got in trouble with the law. But first time I got in trouble with the law, I ended up well, actually the first time I went to a drug rehab, and you know, before I went into this drug rehab, they had me in this hospital, and I was in hospital. It was a detox unit, and I couldn't get out, and they wouldn't let me out until there was room in this rehab. Well, this guy came in, and he said, and he was a Christian, and he said, oh, you know, do you want to come and stay out on my farm rather than sit around in hospital? Come and stay out on my farm, and you know, and until this place in rehab opens up. And I says, oh yeah, you know, and so out I went. Well, anyway, this guy's, you know, he was a full-on Christian, and he you know, we'd do work on the farm in the day, and the whole time while we were working, you know, bit by bit, he'd just be telling me bits about Jesus and reading me scriptures from the Bible. And you know, I'd sort of you know, right from a kid, I just always accepted that there must be a God. I never really questioned that there wasn't one. I just thought, well, there's just got to be one. You know, I'd look at this world, I'd think, well, how did this get here? You know, it just didn't, nothing. These explanations of evolution and the Big Bang, it just never made sense to me. It seemed like I think I just instinctively knew there was a God, and but I'd never wanted anything to really do with him. You know, I just thought that, you know, to become a Christian was a lifestyle option. You could live it as, if you wanted to live that way, you could. You know, and so it was really something I had no real time for. But, you know, this guy was telling me all this stuff, and one night we're sitting there and he's reading out the Bible, and as he was saying it, you know, something in me, I just thought, man, that's the truth. What he's saying's the truth. I knew it, and I thought, oh, but the thing was, I had no intention of following the Bible at all back in those days. And anyway, he said he read out the scripture, and it says, you know, if you're baptized, you'll be saved. Well, there was a lot more to it than that, but I just honed in on that scripture, and I thought to myself, man, I found a loophole in the Bible. I thought, man, if I go down and get baptized in the river, you know, God's got to take me to heaven no matter what I do. So that's what I did. I just said, okay, this was about 11 o'clock at night out the Tangarakau River, and I just says, right, let's go. So off we went down the river, and I got baptized. And in my own heart, I wasn't, you know, I wanted to do it because it said in the Bible to do it, but in my own heart I had no intention of giving my life to Jesus. I had no intention of following the what it said in the Bible, but I did believe enough to feel that it was necessary to do it. So I did it. And I came up out of the water and I didn't feel any different at all. I felt that nothing had happened. And I was 20 when I did that. Well, 16 years passed between then and the time I became a Christian, and if anybody had asked me in those 16 years, and people did, Christians said, oh, you've got to ask Jesus, and I said to them, well, I've been baptised, nothing happened to me. In fact, everything's just gotten worse. And but looking back on it now, I realise His hand was on my life and protecting me that whole time, because He knew the day was going to come when I was going to ask Him in, wholeheartedly. But in between that time, I went to that rehab and I got out of there, and when I got out of there, it was just straight back on drugs. And before long, I got arrested for doctors' surgeries and chemist shops. And well, anyway, they threw me in jail. And what actually happened when I was in jail was, I was forced to kick the habit, and so I did, did the old cold turkey in the cell type deal, and I wasn't in there long. I think I was in there about 6 months or something, but I got into the weights and I was eating properly and stuff like that. And by the time I got out, I'd kind of put it into my head, I'd kind of got this idea in my head that jail, whereas other people, were saying, oh, jail sucks. Well, to me, it was kind of like a place where you could clean up. It seemed to me like the only place where I actually could clean up. And as the years went by, it became like a sort of a haven for me, because it wasn't like I deliberately set out to go to jail, but I think subconsciously, and I suppose in an effort to survive, I just know when I'd got to the point where my body just couldn't take it anymore, and when I got to that point, sooner or later I'd end up in jail, and going to jail would get me off the drugs. I'd be eating properly, sleeping, and looking after myself physically, and it just seemed to keep me alive. I knew that it was the only place I could sort of go to get free from drugs. So it was like a break, it was like a holiday from life for me. And so anyway, as the years went on, that just became my established pattern. I'd go to jail, I'd clean up, get a bit healthier, then I'd get out, and the day I got out, I'd be straight back into it, and I'd be straight back into the drugs, straight back into crime, and I'd just carry on until the time come when my body was once again starting to really suffer, and then I'd end up doing something pretty, what had happened is when I got to that stage, I'd just start taking real risks, whereas before I might be a bit careful about what I was doing. I'd just start taking real risks, and sure enough I'd get caught. Well, this carried on, but while this was carrying on, my addiction was just getting worse and worse, and with the addiction getting as bad as what it did, my sense of values, my sense of self-worth, just everything just started to go downhill, and it just got to the stage where I just didn't really believe in anything. I felt that, I'd look around the world and I just think, man, what's this? Is this all there is? My life, it just seemed, I thought, is this it? And one day I was, my girlfriend's, I think what happened was my girlfriend's parents came round or something to the house, and I was just about to, I was just cooking up a blast, and my girlfriend's parents came round, so I couldn't have it there. So I thought to myself, oh, what can I do? So I took this spoon and some water and stuff, and I thought, oh, I'll shoot off to this toilet in the park and I'll have it there. So anyway, I shot off to this toilet in the park, and I was hanging out, and I wasn't really looking at my surroundings. I was just busy cooking up this taste, anyway, I sat down and I had this gear, and when I actually had it and it went into my system, it was like I could relax for the first time. And as I sort of relaxed, I really just looked around at my surroundings, and I was in this public toilet, but it was this real filthy public toilet. You know, there was old toilet paper and cigarette butts all over the floor, and you know, here was me with a needle stuck in my arm on the toilet, and it just seemed, I just took in the whole scene. You know, I just really looked at it for what it was, and it was like this big, it was like this real, it was like a revelation just came to me, and I thought, man, this is my life. You know, I thought of all the dreams I had when I was a kid, and you know, all the carefree days of childhood and all this, and the things I thought I'd do and the things I wanted to do, and I thought, man, this is all it's come to. You know, and at that moment it was like I really realised that it was never going to be anything else. You know, it was like the truth of it just really hit me like a sledgehammer, that my life would never be anything but this. And I sort of remember going out of that toilet, and I was like in this real, it wasn't so much a depression, it was more just like an absolute just abandonment, really, just abandoning any hope or dream or anything. It was just like I thought, that's it, bang, you know, nothing can be done about it. And you know, from then on, I just never ever thought, I never looked forward to anything really, because it all just seemed, to look forward to something just was like a false hope. And you know, these feelings of sort of just like hopelessness just really got, you know, they became kind of just an everyday thing. It was like, to me, reality was that I was an addict, and there was just nothing me or anyone else could do about it. And you know, and I'd go to counselling, I'd go to rehabs, things the courts had kind of made me go to, and I'd just say to them, I'd say, look, you know you guys mean well and that, but you know, you're wasting your time trying to deal with me, you know. And for me, the only answer to it was either prison, when my body got, you know, to the state where it needed a break, or the methadone program. And you know, and I'd be on and off that methadone program, you know, and then I'd go to jail, I'd get out, and I'd just do the drugs again, and then maybe, you know, sooner or later I'd get on the program, and you know, that was just my life. And well, anyway, by this time it got to the point where you know, as my addiction sort of went to the point where I just couldn't. Usually I'd wait till night time, and when it got to night time, you know, we'd break into a chemist or a doctor or something like that. But it sort of got to the point where I couldn't even wait till night. You know, it was like the waiting from the morning till night just was too much for me. And you know, it got to the point where I was actually holding chemists up. And you know, when it got to that point, I really had just given up on everything. And I suppose really I was just kind of waiting to die. You know, I felt that I'd come to the end of the road, and that really the only thing left for me was to die. And well, anyway, I got arrested for armed robbery, and I went into jail. Well, I wasn't too worried about that, because I thought to myself, you know, and I mean, my parents and everyone were rapt. You know, I mean, your son gets busted for armed robbery, most parents shriek in horror, but mine sort of breathed a sigh of relief, because you know, they knew that at least I was alive, you know. And I sort of felt that, you know, when I went in there, it was like I breathed a sigh of relief too, you know. And anyway, I was in there for a few years there, and while I was in there, you know, I got right into the things I do. I was right into art and playing the guitar and stuff like that, so I got right into that. And but in my mind, I was just waiting for the day I got released so I could just do the whole thing again. Like I hadn't learned one thing. It was just like, right, I need a real good, you know, this will give me a real good break. So anyway, because of the nature of the offence I was in for, I had to undergo this drug counselling. And I went in there and I saw this woman, and I just says, look, you know, I know you mean well, but you know, you're wasting your time. And she said, you know, she was kind of talking away, and the one thing that struck me about this woman is I really got a sense of that she really cared. You know, there was something about her that I really sensed she really cared about what happened to me, you know. And so I'd go along there and talk to her, and she started bringing God into the whole thing. And she was going, well, you know, all you've got to do is, you know, you need God in your life. And I was, oh, yeah, okay. And but in my mind I was just thinking, oh, man, that, you know, if that's what you want to do, that's what you want to do, but it's not for me. And so anyway, we'd have our conversations, and God would always somehow come into it. And then I was sort of asking questions too, you know. And one day she said to me, she said to me, she said, you know, why don't you ask God to reveal Himself to you? And I thought, yeah, well, that sounds simple enough. But even then, it still took a month for me to do it. I just couldn't bring myself to say those words. I'd sit there and I'd think to myself, yeah, all I got to do is say, God, if you're really real, show yourself to me. But every time I'd go to do it, it was like something really was stopping me. And it took about a month. And then one day I was sitting there and we were on this painting thing, and all these other guys that I was painting with, they had to go to some class that the prison was running there, and I was left by myself. So I was sitting there by myself. It was a real nice sunny day, and I was just sitting down, and it just came to me, and I thought to myself, man, why don't I ask now? And so I did, and I just said, you know, and I just talked to Jesus, and I just said, well, Jesus, I said, you know, I've heard your name all my life, you know, right from a little kid, you know, I mean, we've all heard His name. And I said, you know, and until now I've never given you any real thought. I says, but, you know, if you really are there, if you really are who you say you are, you know, show me. Where are you? And, you know, and I sort of sat there and I thought, well, is something going to happen? And, you know, nothing happened. Well, I went back to this counsellor and I said, hey, listen, I said, you know, I asked God, I said, I talked to Jesus. I said, Jesus, where are you? I said, I feel just nothing happened. And she says, well, it doesn't always happen straight away. She said, sometimes He starts to reveal Himself slowly. Well, I thought that was a cop-out. I thought, oh, yeah, because it didn't work, it's very easy to say that. And I just says, oh, yeah. Well, I had about probably another 6 months of my sentence to go at that point. And in my own mind, I'm already planning crimes and things for when I get out, you know. And but you know, even though I was planning all this stuff, and even though a big part of me was thinking, oh, I can't wait to get out and score some drugs and stuff like this, another part of me was just dreading it, you know, because another part of me I sort of realised that you know, I was 33 at that point, and I mean, you just don't survive. Once you get into your 30s on hard drugs, you really are, you know, you're reaching the end of the road. Not many people really make it through their 30s on hard drugs, and I knew that, and I thought, well, you know, I'm kind of at that point, my body just can't take it, and I'd had some real health scares while I was in prison. I got rushed into hospital there. I had this morphine, and I got rushed into hospital, and it turned out that I'd actually had angina, and the valves in my heart were had become clogged up just with impurities from, you know, just injecting just rubbish into my arm, that it had clogged up arteries. So the doctors said to me, they said, you get out and carry on injecting drugs, you'll be dead within a year. So I knew all that, but it really made no difference to me, because I thought, well, you know, what can I do about it? There's nothing I can do. It's in me. This is what I am. And so I've got 6 months to go here, and I'm kind of starting to. And after I'd said that prayer to God, you know, things slowly but surely began to happen, and I didn't notice it at first. It was gradual, and but looking back on it, I saw where it began. You know, it really did begin from that prayer. And I just started to get these little sort of revelations, bit by bit. And before I knew it, I was starting to not so much God in the way that I see Him, but I was getting these hints hints of his existence and hints of who he was, and enough to make me look a little bit further. And as my sentence came to the end, I got to the point where I thought, no, I'm starting to kind of see something here. I'm starting to get the idea there's something missing all my life, and I'm on the verge of seeing it. And yet, at the same time, I had this knowledge also that when I got out, I was just going to do the same old thing, and this was something I just couldn't beat. And I remember saying to this drug counsellor, I said, hey, I said, you know, I am starting to get some sort of a revelation of God. I said, but the revelation of God, it says, it's just not strong enough to beat this drive within me, which, you know, for drugs. And so when I did actually get released, I was in that state of mind that I was wanting to find God, but I just couldn't beat this drive within me. And of course, as soon as I got out, bang, that day, straight back into it. Well, within days of getting out, all thoughts of looking for God or anything were just absolutely out the window, and I just went straight back into the same life. And you know, and I was already you know, everything's the same. Within a week, I was in the same desperate situation that I'd been in before I came to jail. And but see, looking back on it now, God was looking after me right from the thing. He knew that was going to be my last time in jail, but I didn't know that. And the next minute I get offered this job. So I thought, oh, well, okay. So I took this job on. Well, I was getting quite good money. Well, I was spending the whole lot on morphine. Nevertheless, though, I was actually spending money on it rather than out knocking off chemists. So I was kept away from crime for that amount of time. And then I thought, right, I'll get on the methadone program. So I went and got on the methadone program. Well, once I got on that, it was like there was no need for crime, you know, and everything started to work out. And I mean, I was still an addict. I was still reliant on methadone, which really is a much harder drug to get off than morphine or heroin. But the thing is, you just go down to the chemist every day and pick it up. You know, you don't have to go out and do crime for it. So to me, it seemed like the best thing I could do. The situation I was now in was the best that my life could be. You know, I'm on the Down, I'm crime free, and bang, that's about as much as I could expect, and I was happy with that. And so 2 years went by, and then it just seemed to just come kind of out of nowhere. After 2 years, things started to happen that at first I thought were like a coincidence. I thought, oh, that's a coincidence, until it started happening more and more. And what started happening was things like this. I'd be walking down the street, and a Christian would just walk up to me. Some total stranger would just walk up to me and say, oh, do you know that God has got a plan for your life? And I says, oh, no. And they says, yeah, well, you know, God has got a plan for your life. And I was, oh, yeah. And I said, oh, yeah, catch you later, mate. And I was off, you know. And first time it happened, I didn't think too much of it. You know, most of us have had a Christian come up to us in the street. But I mean, then it happens the next day. A different Christian comes up to me and says, oh, you know, God has got a plan for your life. And I thought, yeah, well, I says, well, that's out of it, because someone told me that yesterday. And they said, oh, well, there you go, mate, you know, God's calling on you and all this. And I thought, oh, it's just a coincidence, you know. Well, the next day it happens again, you know, and I thought to myself, now, okay, we've all had a Christian come up to us in the street. I thought, I may have had it like once or twice, maybe 3 times in a year. I thought, now it's happened 3 times in 3 days. You know, I thought, it's like these people are targeting me. And then I thought, well, but then none of them knew that the other ones had come and seen me. But it was what they were saying too that was really getting me. It was a personal thing they were saying. They weren't just saying the usual things a Christian was saying. They were actually saying to me that God had actually pointed me out to them and said, go up to that man and tell him. And I was thinking, oh, this is getting a little bit freaky here, you know. So I thought, man, something's going on behind the scenes. And so anyway, this starts happening, and before I know it, I just can't get away from it. Like, I mean, I'm walking down the street and I'll look down on the ground and there'll be something on the ground about Jesus Christ. You know, I'll turn on TV and something will come over about Christianity. I'll read through the paper and my eyes will just fall, you know, and it was far too much to be a coincidence. And I started to think to myself, hey, something is really going on here that I just don't understand. What was happening that I was getting the answer to the prayer I prayed in jail, but I didn't put that together back then. All I knew was I was bewildered by the whole thing. And so anyway, this is happening. Well, at around this time, my brother, who had always been in the same scene as I was, and he was in a real mess at the time, his girlfriend had came from a Christian family. Well, they were hard out into the drugs as well, but she had always said, you know, Jesus can get us out of this if we give our life to Jesus. And he'd always said, it's a load of rubbish, and, you know, you've got to stand on your own 2 feet, and Christians are just weak and all this. You know, he had this real bad view towards Christians. And so when he comes round home and he's going, I've found Jesus, I've found Jesus. You know, I was the most surprised person on earth, because he was very anti-Christianity, to the point where he'd walked into churches and really gone off in a church, you know, because his girlfriend took his son to church. He went in and dragged him out and caused a major scene. And so, you know, I was the most surprised person on earth when he comes round home and says, I've found Jesus, you know. But I tell you though, it wasn't what he said that did it. It was something in his eyes. Like, I looked into his eyes, and I mean, this is my brother I've known all my life, and I looked into his eyes and I knew that he had changed overnight. He had changed into a new person. I could see it right in front of my eyes. And I mean, you know, well, once you get confronted with something like that, it's, you know, you're a fool to just disregard it and walk away. I couldn't disregard it. I thought something has happened to him that is beyond anything I can explain, you know. And this, going along with all this other stuff that's been happening on a daily basis, it was just all, I thought, what is happening, you know. And so anyway, I'm just absolutely bewildered. But nevertheless, as far as I went personally, I had no intention of following God. I had no intention of giving up drugs. I was just amazed by it all, but I had no intention of following it. And so anyway, the next morning I get up and it's time to go down the chemist to pick up my methadone. So I'm about to walk out the door and I see my brother's car come screaming up the driveway. So he jumps out of the car and comes rushing inside, and he's going, I've got a message from God. And I'm, oh man, and he says, and I've got a message for you from God. And I thought, oh, not another one, you know. And he goes, right, this is what God said. He said, one, he said, you're gonna walk off the methadone program. He said, 2, there's going to be you're not going to go through withdrawals, and you'll be absolutely set free of drugs. He said, You'll get saved, you'll meet Jesus. And he said, and a lot of people will get saved as a result of what happens to you. And I just thought, now 2 things happened instantaneously. When he said that, in my mind I thought, what a load of rubbish. Because first thing was, he said, you're going to walk off the methadone. I thought, not in a million years. He said, the second thing, he says, you're going to have no withdrawals. I thought, physically impossible. He says, you're going to meet Jesus Christ. I thought, well, I wasn't too sure about that one. And all these people getting saved, I thought, you know, that just seemed a fairy tale. And so this happened in my mind. But as he said those words, from in here, I can only describe this in one way. It was like a voice just spoke. And, you know, I've been through some pretty freaky experiences in all the years I was on drugs. And, you know, drugs like LSD and cactus and mushrooms, angel dust, that sort of stuff gives you pretty freaky experiences. And yet